they're outside of Los Angeles, and I'm supposed to do, this is all part of my Jewish sacred aging work. So they want 2 programs in May on the mental health stuff that we do. And they're scheduling it for 6 o'clock at night, which is 9 o'clock. So I said, how long do you want this class to go? I mean, like an hour and a half, because already that's like 10:30. 10:30, I'm usually tucked in, you know? So they said, just about an hour. I said, okay, so I'll be done by 10 o'clock. She said, yes. I said, okay, it's going to be a struggle. All right, here we go. What's going on here? This screen is going silly.
You all right?
No, no. The little people inside hate me. And
Oh,
okay, here we go. This is the program for tonight, the last of our 4-part series on issues that surround our family and ourselves. The commercial tonight is, but you have to mute yourself, please, because there's a lot of feedback.
I was doing that middle.
Yeah, that's right. Just push the magic mute button. That's it. The commercial for tonight is that next week begins a 3-part adult education series that I put together with Jill, with a colleague called Rabbi Lawrence Kotok, who was at Brit Kodesh in Rochester, and also started his career on Long Island. Some of you know where that is. He was in Glen Cove and Roslyn. Roslyn he started when we were ordained, and then Glen Cove. But anyway, Larry is a really top-notch teacher, and he's going to be looking at the development of Christianity and Islam out of Judaism, which we've talked about a lot off and on during the year, and also anti-Semitism and the whole historical connection with anti-Semitism, which, as you know, is on the rise in the United States. So I want to make you aware that it's in the Temple Times, and it's for the next 3 Wednesdays. Tonight, we're going to focus in on something that has become really one of the more requested workshops that we do in Jewish sacred aging, and that has to do with rituals. And this explosion of new creative rituals that have emerged in the last decade, driven predominantly by baby boomers, to meet life stages that no one talked about when I was growing up, and certainly did not appear in the Talmud. Some of these things are pretty simple, and some of the things, which we'll say for the last part, have become a little bit controversial. So I'm interested in your reaction to these things. Ritual, as you know, is very, very important. Religious ritual is designed to take something ordinary and elevate it to something sacred. So since, as you know, because we've talked about this all year, Judaism is a religious civilization that prizes time, T-I-M-E, time, and that we try to make moments in time out of the ordinary, take them out of the ordinary, whether it's Friday night, Saturday morning, whether it's Shabbat, whether it's various holidays, whether it's the fact that moments that we exist, the miracles of everyday living, and the blessings that we're supposed to do during every single day. Each one of us have rituals, secular rituals that we do. Sometimes we call it routine, but we have certain rituals that's part of who we are. And there's nothing wrong, and they are part of our identity. So, you know, whether it's sports rituals or family rituals, it's like that old movie Avalon, the Barry Levinson movie, where everybody got into a fight because the grandfather was late and he always cut the turkey, and somebody cut the Thanksgiving turkey before the grandfather arrived. That's breaking years and years of ritual. People sit in certain places in synagogues. Certain people come to regularly, they have a certain seat, and God forbid somebody walks in and sits in that seat, and because they don't know anywhere, they're visiting, you know, and the usher comes over, they hit them over the head, they drag them out, and everything else like that. So it's everybody has rituals. So part of the work that we've discovered in the work that I do on Jewish sacred aging is, because longevity has extended the lifespan so long, and because we're dealing with so many different life stages now, what has happened is that people have said, there's no ritual, there's no prayer, there's no meditation that I can do for this. Well, let's write our own. We'll either adapt something, or we'll create something brand new. So I'm going to go through maybe a half a dozen of these things, and because we have 1 hour, this is scheduled for 1 hour, we should make it. So here's the first one. This emerged organically out of life experience. By the way, all of these things that we're going to talk about today are published. Most of them you can acquire on my website, and many of them have been used in real life. So that's also important. So this is not theoretical and by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so there's about 16 screens here. So there's about 20 people on this class. By a show of hands, how many of you have an advanced directive, or live, as sometimes called a living will? How many of you? Just raise your hand. Okay, good. If you don't, you better get one. Where did you sign? I need a volunteer, somebody who raised their hand. Okay, somebody raised their hand. Oh, don't be shy. All of a sudden, you're okay. Marilyn, unmute. Marilyn, where did you sign your advanced directive?
Initially in Maryland, they wouldn't let.
Not the state, but in a lawyer's office?
No. What I meant is it was required at a hospital if you were being.
Yes.
I think in an attorney's office.
Okay, so yes, and the Patient Self-Determination Act, which is now law for many, many years, they have to ask you if you have an advanced directive. I have no why this watch talks to me. I have no idea why. My daughter and my son-in-law gave me this watch for my birthday, and there's people in here, and it just sent me something. I have no idea what it is. I signed my advance directive in my attorney's office, Maryland. And by the way, parenthetically, if you don't revise it every 5 years, you're making a mistake because the technology changes and you change. We did this a couple of months ago. I signed mine in the attorney's office, very sterile, very cold. Here are the forms, sign it. Here's your bill. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And I left the attorney's office and I stopped at one of my favorite synagogues, otherwise known as Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee, and I realized that I just signed a document acknowledging the fact that I'm going to die. And this is not rabbinic hyperbole. All of a sudden said, holy, expletive deleted. There's got to be some blessing. I mean, this is a very powerful moment in somebody's life. So in one of my classes that I was teaching at HUC, which is on the longevity revolution, we were trolling around this with a couple of students. I said, let's do this. I want you to think about writing when you go into your congregation, write me a blessing that you could give to members of your synagogue, little 3x5 card. And if they go sign an advance directive, right after they sign it, they just say this blessing, 30 seconds. This is what they came up with. Listen to this and listen to the language. By the way, no congregation has yet to put this out. I don't understand why. It doesn't cost you anything. And it really major teaching. First of all, it begins with the Shehechianu, and then goes to God who has given me the power of choice and who has brought me the strength to make these decisions today. Thank you for granting me the wisdom to think ahead and to understand the great range of possibilities that could come in the future. When the time comes when I am no longer able to make decisions on my own behalf, may my wishes be carried out by those who are close to me. I have been blessed with so much, and may my family be at peace with my decisions. May we love one another and cherish our time together. Amen. Very simple. But if you listen to the language, it basically says, I had to make these decisions. Thank you for the ability to have the ability to make these decisions, to have the ability to choose. And if I can't no longer choose, I hope that my people who I've designated will follow my instructions. In essence, what they say. Amen. Very simple, but what it does is takes a very sterile moment in the lawyer's office or the hospital, and you just say, thank you. I have been given the opportunity to make these decisions. Amen. Right? Very, very easy. For some reason, I can't understand why any congregation doesn't do that. But what do I know? Here's another thing. How many of you know? Jan, do you have a question? Or are you waving at me? You have to unmute.
No, I have a question or a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Unfortunately, I've had several occasions where I've had to review these last orders of permission. And in some circumstances, they're much more complicated than they were.
Oh, yes.
5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
And we're getting into such technology now that it really almost takes a physician sitting there with you, or a hospice person, hospice clergy, to walk you through what these directives mean now to certain people.
Correct.
For example, my husband was tube fed at the end of his life, and I was feeding him for 1.5 years. But that runs into real territory towards the end with cancer.
Right.
And these are very complicated. I had a similar situation with a son who was dying. And it's not as simple as it used to be. And I've been dealing with these now for 40 years.
Well, you raise a point which we've made throughout the entire year, that I believe that every synagogue must, at least once a year, have a major educational program like we've been doing on advanced directives, how to fill it out, what the Jewish position of an end of life is, what the state of Florida's laws are, what the pulse form is, if it's legal in Florida, et cetera, because just like you said, things are very much more complicated now. Medical technology keeps pushing the envelope, and most of our people are not aware of it until they have a crisis. And when you have a crisis, is not the time to make a decision. So I urge you to carry that message next year. I know congregations, some of them who do that. I did that in my congregation every year. We had a major forum on this, and some people showed up and it wasn't for them. And a year later, they're in the audience because all of a sudden in the last year, they had to walk the walk. How many of you have ever heard of a ritual called Simchat Chochmah? Simchat Chochmah. These sisterhood people should have heard of it. Goldie, what is a Simchat Chochmah?
So we created one in a women's Rosh Chodesh group.
Right.
When one of the women turned 75.
Okay. So Simchat Chochmah, these words, Simcha is a happy occasion. Chochmah is wisdom. So a Simchat Chochmah is a ritual that celebrates the acquisition of wisdom. It is usually done in this day and age, mostly by women, not in organized congregation land, but in Rosh Chodesh groups or in sometimes alternative chavurot. For the life of me that I do not understand, and I'm speaking in congregations all across North America, there's no synagogue that I know of that has institutionalized this. So I'll throw this challenge out to you. Significant numbers of baby boomers are leaving institutional synagogues because there's really nothing there for them. Here's an opportunity to take people of a certain age, and usually the people who have done this were people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, who say, in essence, I have lived. Thank God. I have acquired a tremendous amount of knowledge, practical knowledge. And thank you for the ability to do this. And I look forward to continuing. So this is a prayer. This is all published. We published it. So that was done by a woman named Selma many years ago at Holy Blossom in Toronto. Holy Blossom is the name of the biggest synagogue in Canada, Holy Blossom Temple. In fact, I'm teaching for them next week. Her name was Selma. She went to her rabbi. I think she was turning 70. And she wanted to say in front of the congregation, the open ark, thank you. I'm healthy. I'm alive. I have acquired wisdom. So picture this. Picture this if you institutionalize, made this available to people in your congregation. In front of the ark on a Friday night or a Shabbos morning, a man or a woman comes. They go to the rabbi or the cantor and help them write a ritual, or they take one that's already been written. And this is the paragraph in the prayer that we publish from Selma. Listen to the language. This will light you up. Picture this. In front of the ark, she turned, faced the congregation, and said the following: River of light and truth, you have sustained me these many years and brought me to this place in my life's journey. Let me look out with wisdom from the high ground of my years and experiences over the terrain of my life. Let me gaze out towards the past and the future with a heightened sense of your presence as my guide. Listen to this. Let me see that growth is not reserved for any one season, and that love and fulfillment are not the exclusive provinces of the young. As today I celebrate my life's continued unfolding, I am awestruck by the wonder of my being. And so I pray that kindness and compassion may be on my lips, that strength and courage may be with me in my comings and goings, and that I may continue to learn from and to teach those dear to me. God, my creator, you are the first and the last. May my life ever be a song of praise to you. Amen. Now tell me, what's your reaction to that? And yeah, Felice. You got to unmute, Felice. All these months, Felice. You still can't find the mute button. Close your eyes and point your finger.
I
There we
did
go.
it all these months. That should be the worst thing that I ever do. So terribly. Thank you. My reaction is OMG, that is spectacular. I want to do that. That is absolutely something that we should have at Temple. And a quick remembrance, those who attend every single Friday night may remember about 2 years ago when Marie Reitzes turned 70, she asked a cantor who did a special similar, not the same words, but similar service. I was so touched by it that I scheduled for my 75th last year with cantor, but of course COVID got in between. But I think we should jump on that immediately. It is gorgeous, it is necessary, it is important, it is beautiful. Thank you.
No, thank you. Because I really think every synagogue has to do this because it sends a tremendously powerful message. And the line that she wrote, that Selma wrote, you know, that remind me that love and fulfillment are not the exclusive provinces of the young. This is right out of Jewish tradition, that as long as you're alive, growth, love, intimacy, passion, it's part of who we are. Here's another ritual. This is a little bit more challenging. And all of these have been used. About 15 years ago, when I was still working, when we were running the department before the union killed it, I was sitting at the desk and a phone rang. It was a colleague saying, Address, I got this guy in my congregation. He just left my office. He was married in the congregation. He was past president of the congregation. His wife passed away about 15 months ago. We did the funeral from the bima, from the synagogue. He just came to see me and said he wants a ritual. He wants to go on the bima after religious school one Sunday afternoon. He wants to go on the bima, that same bima that he got married on, that the funeral started on, that his kids' bar mitzvahs was on. And he wants a ritual so that he can take off his wedding ring. What do you got? And I said, I ain't got nothing. But if you do this, send it to me. And that was really the beginning of our collecting rituals. About a month later, a letter arrived. If you remember letters, those are little things with stamps, if you remember them. And he sent the ritual that he did with this guy. This is not, this is not for everybody, okay? So please don't say this is horrible. It's not for everybody. These rituals that we're talking about are very personal. They're very personal. This man needed, I think, psychologically, needed his faith community to give him permission to move on to the rest of his life. This is what the ritual said. And you can imagine he's standing on the bima. The ark is open. And they read this. This precious ring you slipped upon my finger when we stood under our chuppah, I took to my heart as a continuous circle of love. It remained a symbol of our unity as we held our babies, celebrated our milestones, and soothed our hurts. A witness to all of our married days, it was once new and shining. With the passing of years, the color deepened and warmed, as did the exquisiteness of our life together. Now I am without you, and I must move to another way of living. I must begin a new life. As I remove this circle of love, I know it is not easy to let go and surrender into memory what once was and can no longer be. As I heal and go forward, I will always be strengthened by a life we cherished and that part of my heart that is forever yours. Amen. Any reaction? It's deeply personal. I understand that. Yes, Bob.
My father was raised Orthodox, and he didn't believe in a 2-ring ceremony. He didn't believe in a ceremony with 2 rings. Is a 2-ring ceremony? Can you have another ceremony with 2 rings?
It's 2-ring ceremonies are up to the bride and groom. Almost 100% of the weddings I've done in the 48 years I've been a rabbi have been double ring. So, any other comments? Because I this is, again, not for everybody, but if you understand the psychological need for the community to give permission, it's okay. And by the way, lest you think that this is just, you know, a one-off, families deal with this in very crucial ways. If you lined up every rabbi and cantor and clergy person in Duval and St. Johns County and said, have you ever had an experience where, you know, a year after a spouse dies, the adult children go crazy because mom or dad is now dating and they say they're going to get remarried. And the line of, how can you do that? So this is real life. I mean, again, all the stuff we do in my work is tachlis oriented. These rituals are drawn from people's needs out of real life. It's not theoretical. And one of the questions that's being raised, and I'll just throw this out to you, is this good? Is this a function that we create all these individualized rituals for individuals when they want it? And does that diminish the power of religious ritual if everybody has a sense that they can write their own and do their own? And that's a debate, by the way, that is ongoing amongst colleagues. You know, should there be some institutionalization, which is that horse is out of the barn, because there's so many people. There's actually a whole website, ritualwell.com, that has nothing but creative and new rituals, and they're more and more and more popping up. So this is an example. Okay. Here's another blessing. Yeah, Goldie.
I would just share with everybody that it was very important to me that at the end of the first year of Kathy's death, that I marked that experience. And I created a ritual. I find it much harder to do that than I imagined it was going to be.
Yes.
But I did. And I anticipated and planned that at the conclusion of the ritual, I would stop wearing, I was wearing her ring around my neck, that I would stop wearing it. And when I got home, I said, I'm not ready yet. And so I wore it for quite a number of months after that.
Thank you, Goldie. Thank you. This validates that these are very personal things, and they respond to a deep psycho-spiritual need in many people, not all, but many. And we're finding more and more people really gravitating to say, I'm in this situation in my life. I just can't turn the page. I just can't let go. I need some prayer, ritual, meditation that guides me, that accompanies me. It's this theology of accompaniment that I'm very fond of talking about. Even if it's done just privately or with just one or two people. It doesn't have to be in the synagogue in a formal, and you don't necessarily need the clergy there at all, the mishigas. But a lot of people just create these things on their own to transition from one thing to another. It's very, very powerful. That's what I'm saying. These rituals are very, very powerful. Yeah, Bob.
It's just like a permission to move on, right?
It's exactly what it is. It's a spiritual permission to say it's okay to turn the page, because we've all been talking to people who have moved out of a particular situation, and they say, I really want to move on, but I can't. Whether it's not necessarily a death, it could be a divorce, it could be the end of a breakup of a relationship. It is all kinds of things, and the ritual accompanies them. One of the prayers that came out of one of our works, and this actually was a part of the conversation I had with this congregation today, who's doing a whole series of programs in May about Mental Health Awareness Month. This is a meditation written by a colleague of ours. I was her thesis advisor for her doctorate, whose father died of Alzheimer's. And Michelle wrote a whole little book about this and included a series of prayers. This is a mishaberach for people dealing with mental health issues. Okay, so if you ever do like a mental health awareness, if you ever do a program next year about Judaism and mental health, it's one of the things we do in my work. And you need to do it because the mental health component of this pandemic is going to be with us for years. So picture, in addition to or in place of the mishaberach that we usually do on the Friday night or Shabbos morning, you're doing something around mental health and raising the awareness about the stigma. And this is a mishaberach. Listen to the language again. May God, who blessed our fathers and mothers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, grant blessed healing to all those members of our congregation and members of our families who struggle with mental illness. May God be with them in their illness and give them patience, hope, and courage. May God so endow their attending physicians and therapists with insight and skill that they may soon be restored to health and vigor of body and mind. May God be with their families too and grant them patience, hope, and courage. May God remove their anger and wipe away their feelings of guilt. May God endow them with a full life and with love, that they too enjoy health and vigor of body and mind. May God bind up their wounds, that they may enjoy many a simcha and thank God for the blessings of health, as we say, Amen. very lovely. It talks about all the things, anger, guilt, the why. Just a little blessing to include in a program around mental health, but it acknowledges from the Bima, okay? Because most people still, even with mental health, there's a stigma. It's like this week's Torah portion. You have this stigma. We're going to throw you out of the camp. Yeah. It's easier to talk about cancer than it is about someone dealing with clinical depression or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And yet it's in every synagogue. And according to NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, I think it's in, like 1 out of 4 families. It's the significance of the mental health concern. And that's why more and more congregations, this is the book we did for my department on Judaism and mental health, caring for the soul. It's just nothing but rituals, programs, essays, sermons, healing services, just focusing on the mental health issue because it's rampant. Here's another thing, comes right out of real life. Now, I know that this does not happen in Jacksonville. So you do not have to tell me that I don't know why you're mentioning this because there's nothing like this in Jacksonville. Nothing like this happens. It's irrelevant to where we live. But where I live in New Jersey, as you know, it's lawless up here. It's like the chief rabbi was Tony Soprano. So it doesn't make any difference up here, okay? Every once in a while, somebody will come and knock at the rabbi's door and they'll say, hi, come on, what can I do for you? And the guy will say, Rabbi, I came to see because I have to ask you a favor. Yeah, sure, what do you want? Well, I've been a widower for 5 years. I'm 78 years old. I went on this cruise. I met this wonderful lady. She lives in, let's say, St. Augustine, and we hit it off. And we really, it's great. And she was divorced, and I'm 78 and she's 74. And she's alone and I'm alone. And we both have, adult children, and our states are settled, and it's all wonderful. And, I've been alone and she's alone. So what I want to know is if you could come to my condo on 2 weeks after school, like on 2 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and say a blessing because her name's Rebecca and we're going to be living together. And of course, the rabbi says, Mazel Tov, Sherman, I'd be happy to do the wedding. To which Sherman says, illegal use of wording, Rabbi. We have no intention of getting married. None at all. She has her estate. She has her stuff set. I have my stuff. Look, let me explain something to you. It's very lonely. I come home to an empty house. I have friends, but I'm alone. I don't know how much more time I have. She doesn't know how much more time. We found each other. We just want you to say a blessing, to say, thank God we found each other, and may we just have peace and love. So here we published in the book that we did for the union when I did the department, and also this is part of the ritual workshop, a couple of rituals that have been used for to bless older adult cohabitation without benefit of marriage. Many of my colleagues refused to do this. I got in a lot of trouble. Well, somebody really yelled at me about this. Once or twice, I had colleagues really in the workshop really say, this is fraud. I can't do this. I represent a tradition, the state. I'm supposed to represent the state. This is fraud. I said, it's not fraud. It's very clear. This is not a wedding. This is not a wedding. This is just two people who found each other, and you as their clergy say, thank God you found each other. It's not a wedding. It's very clear it's not a wedding. Linda, just wait. Let me finish this and I'll get you. Okay. Bob, just let me finish this. So you can picture this at, Sherman's condo by the ocean. and Rebecca's there, and the kids may be there, and their friends, and the rabbi comes, and on the back they got the bagels and the chopped liver and the schnecken. It's all ready, and he reads the following. This is one of the two things that we published. Today we celebrate the loving commitment of these two people to each other, and we share in their joy. In the Song of Songs, we read, Ani l'dodi v'dodi li, I am my beloved and my beloved's is mine. This represents not only God's relationship with Israel, but also the commitment that is shared between these two people. Love lives as long as the human heart beats, as long as we draw breath. The soul reaches out to another, recognizing a kindred spirit, a receptive companion to share life's vicissitudes. Age is meaningless, for the mysteries of the heart know no temporal boundaries. Today, we acknowledge their love for each other and bless their commitment. May they be healthy and lead productive lives. May they find sustenance in their relationship. May they find enjoyment in each other. May their physical presence strengthen their spiritual growth. May they nurture their fragility and rely on their strengths. May their days be full and inundated with love. Amen. Anybody offended by that? Anybody think that that's misrepresentation of the tradition? Because I do have colleagues who really asked me not to publish that, which of course meant that I was going to publish it, and we did. Linda, you were first.
I think back to a client that I had who was widowed, and his lady friend was widowed as well. They wanted to live together, but they were afraid of what it would look like to the grandchildren if it wasn't, quote, legal.
Right.
Well, they had a Jewish wedding at the Jacksonville Jewish Center, the conservative synagogue, but it wasn't a legal wedding by the state of Florida.
Right.
But,
I understand.
but they wanted something because of the grandchildren. They didn't want them to think it's okay to go live with somebody before you get married. But I thought it was lovely. I like the idea of that.
Well, I'll tell you how that fits. When I first did this workshop many years ago for a congregation in Illinois, in Evanston, and we trotted this out, we were just experimenting with this, and it was doing a scholar in residence weekend in the days when you could do weekends and actually go to a congregation and be part of them for a weekend. Those days are probably gone forever. It was after lunch in the chapel, and we did this, and it was a nice group of people. There's about 50 people in the chapel, and this one guy who's sitting in the back stands up like this, and he gives me what I call the layperson's finger, and he goes like this, and he says, "Rabbi Address, you can't do that." And I said, "Why?" And it sparked an interest. He said, "Because what's going to happen after this happens? 2 weeks later, suppose my grandson, who's at Northwestern, knocks on the rabbi's door and says, 'Rabbi, I was at Pop-Pop's ceremony that you did. It was great. Listen, this is my girlfriend, Rebecca. We've been living together for about a year and a half. We're both graduate students at Northwestern. We're deeply, deeply, deeply in like. We would like one of those blessings too.' And this has actually happened. And so this engendered a very interesting conversation, because the majority of the people in the workshop were contemporaries of all of ours right now. And they basically said there's a difference between a kid who's 20 years old and somebody in the scenario that I just painted. Or is there? I mean, I happen to think there is. And so, and I'm saying, like I said, is this for everybody? No. And it's fraught with, I'm not disputing that it's fraught with concern, because who's to say that 5 years after you do this, Rebecca knocks on the rabbi's door and says, listen, I need to tell you something. I'm moving back with my kids. And you say, well, why? Is something wrong? She says, look, I love this guy. We've had a great life together. We've been really happy, but he's been just diagnosed with cancer. And I walked this walk once before. I can't do it again. I cannot do it again. I'll do everything I can. I'm not making this up, okay? I'll do everything I can, but his children are there. I mean, so when I'm saying that these things have to be evaluated, I just want to present this stuff to you as to show you that this is what's happening in the world right now. This is it's very organic. To me, it's very exciting, because I think it really shows people's desire to have some sort of connection. Who else had their hand up after Linda? Bob was next, and Goldie. We got to get to the good stuff. I only have 20 minutes.
What if the spouse has Alzheimer's disease?
Just hold that. I'm going to get to, that's the big close. When we're going to redefine adultery. Okay. That's the big closing. Adultery is the big closing.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Well, don't thank me. I mean, my hands are clean.
Right.
You have to be careful in this day and age. You really do. Who else had Goldie had their hand up, and then Marilyn, go ahead. Somebody else, some other guy had their
So I don't understand what the problem is with Rebecca, the 70 whatever year old, who has the experience and then later says, I can't do this and I'm leaving. How does that make the first experience not appropriate?
Oh, no, it doesn't. I'm just saying that this can happen.
Oh,
This can. So when some of my colleagues said you can't do it because it's not a wedding, and a wedding is illegal and it's a binding thing. But the reality is this is happening. I mean, maybe not in Jacksonville, but it is happening in other places around North America. And it's just, this is why I raise this, because I think congregations have the responsibility to talk about this stuff. And the reason why I think that is because people in the congregation are doing it, are living it. And and it shouldn't be like a shonda, oh, we don't talk about it. You know, this is what's happening. I'm a believer that if things are happening in the lives of people in a congregation, the synagogue has a responsibility to address them. And wait till we get to the thing that Bob talked about, which has really gotten us in trouble. Who's Sheila? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this happened to a kid cousin of mine in Jersey a few years ago.
Jersey, of course.
She was widowed and she had a couple of kids, and her fiance had been divorced and he had children. So they're pretty much, I guess, maybe in their late 50s. And 2 years ago, they had a commitment ceremony. They are living together. They bought a house together. And first we thought it was a wedding. And they said, no, it is a commitment ceremony. We are actually not getting married.
Right.
And they're very happy.
And who else? I don't want to hold up conversation. Marilyn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that doing something like that for grandchildren, I think is deceptive. And I would not want to lie to my grandchildren. I would want to explain it to them. But I think doing something like that is sneaky, and I would resent it when I was the kid that found out about it.
That's why I'm raising this thing, because it just engenders some interesting conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Dan,
I would like them to think I would never lie to them, because I wouldn't.
Dan, did you have your hand up?
I did it first. I was just going to tell Sheldon that, it's not so bad. I was a holdout. I said, I just like him, I said I wasn't going to get married, and 13 years later, here I am.
Well, it just goes to show you never say never, right?
Exactly. And I'm told that many times.
We only have about 15. Go ahead, Ron.
I just was thinking, I don't have a problem with the concept of what you're talking about. Would be fine with me. And in Florida, it would probably work okay. But there are some states where they have community property laws, and that could potentially cause some financial ramifications if someone is behaving as though they were married.
Correct. And that's part of a whole larger, we don't have the time to go into a whole larger conversation about the role of counseling for people who go on to into second and third relationships after. And I actually have a guy who's working on that for me. I'm advising him. He's in rabbinic school, and that's a project that we're working on, because there really is no set manual. We all can do premarital counseling, and it's easier for somebody, a kid. But when you're 75 or 80 years old and you're coming to the rabbi to do that second or third marriage, there's all kinds of, like I'm doing a second marriage for a former congregant of mine next month. And we just had one of our first premarital counseling. And I said, look, you're not 25 years old anymore. You know, your kids are grown. You're both divorced. You know, let's talk about prenups. And they went like that. I said, well, wait a minute. You know, you're both bringing into the wedding. They're both professionals. They never had considered it. I said, I need, as a responsible clergy, I need to mention this. These are some of the things that what about your finances? You're going, you both are bringing, anyway, this is part of a larger conversation that we sadly don't have time for. But you're right. I mean, you have to be cognizant of the fact of a variety of different things. Okay, I want to give you two more things, because I want to be respectful of your time, because I think we're contracted till 8 o'clock. And this, it usually is at least a 2-hour workshop when I do this in congregations. This is what I'm going to read to you now is a very difficult meditation. It's beautiful. And the language is stark. But because we're facing a crisis dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, where we're going to be hit with a tripling, according to the Alzheimer's Association, in the next decade and a half as baby boomers age out of dementia and Alzheimer's, and with early onset Alzheimer's. This is a meditation from a book that was published by our rabbinic organization on facing dementia. I'm going to read it to you, but I want to warn you, it is very stark. It's beautiful. But you can imagine somebody coming home from the doctor, getting the diagnosis, and they would pick up this prayer and read the following. My God, I am about to enter a wilderness. All that I have thought is me. My voice, my thinking, my memories will slip away, and I may not even comprehend it. As I enter this wilderness, my step quivers and my soul hurts. In this leap of faith, I will come to rely on so many, and we will all rely on you. Whom will I recognize? Who will recognize me? Even though my mind will change, please do not let the knitting of my soul unravel. Only you will know me, even if I do not know myself. Please help me to remember that others before me have found you in the wilderness. I am not sure I will know to look for you, but please look for me. It's a very simple, but in many ways, very profound meditation. Very profound meditation. This is a meditation, a prayer that I actually used last week. A family in my former congregation that I'm helping out was in an automobile accident. With 3 boys. The youngest, I'm actually doing his bar mitzvah in a month. The oldest of the boys, 17-year-old boy, was the victim in the accident, was taken to a hospital, pronounced brain dead. I did the shivas last weekend. And in talking to, and it was out of town, it was in Virginia. And in talking to the family last, I don't remember when, they were on their way to sign papers. And I said, I will, if you want, I will send you a meditation that we use when you have to make that decision to end life support. And I sent it to them. And this is how it goes. Adonai, please help us as we face this terrible decision. Bring us close to you so that we feel less alone. Holding on and letting go are two impossible opposites. And yet here we stand at the bedside of the one we love so much, trying to do both. Please, God, take gently, enfold him under your protective wings and care for her always, even as we try to do in life. Give us strength as we prepare to meet the world without them, and guide us as we face the days ahead. And it ends with the Shema as tradition. Very simple. What it does is take something that is sterile in a hospital room, frightening, powerfully frightening, overwhelmingly sad, and attempts to place it, as religious ritual does, in a context that takes it out of the simple, the sterile, and accompanies it to something more sacred. Just as an example. Okay. Now for Weston, we have the following scenario. Somebody will walk into a rabbi's office this week, because what I'm about to tell you is in every congregation, and say, I need to make an appointment because I am in trouble. And I'm just going to use male, female, because it's just a lot easier. But what's the trouble? I said, I've overcome with guilt. As you know, my spouse is in the memory care unit with Alzheimer's. She rarely recognizes me. She doesn't recognize the children. We all know where this is going. I love her. I visit her 3, 4, 5 times a week. But I'm troubled. Why are you troubled? Well, you know, I'm 75 years old and I'm in business. I still go to business and I'm healthy, and I've been by myself now for a couple of years. And you know, last year my kids gave me this respite trip to the Canadian Rockies. It was beautiful. It was just what I needed. But along the way in this same tour bus, I met this woman who lives in the Jacksonville area, and we struck up a friendship. And she's alone. She's a widow. And when I got back here, we exchanged phone calls and we met for dinner. And we became very, very friendly. And we've become intimate. And I'm racked with guilt because I love my wife and I take care of her. And I try to tend to her every need. But you have to understand, Rabbi, I'm also very much alive and I'm alone. And I just need to know if I'm doing something wrong. Am I really committing adultery or what? I said, and I can't discuss this with our circle of friends that we've gone out to dinner with and traveled with for the last quarter century. And I don't think I can discuss this with my adult children. I don't think they would understand. This scenario is not fiction. I will bet you my Phillies tickets, which after last night are totally worthless, that this is happening in Ahavat Chesed. And given the numbers of people on the call, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you know an individual who perhaps has walked this walk or may walk this walk. It's not only Sandra Day O'Connor, Goldie, it's many people. She was the one who had the guts to talk about it. My question to you is this adultery? My question to you is, should we, as a religious community or a synagogue, create some sort of document which in a certain context and situation gives permission for somebody to do this and alleviates guilt? Unless you think that this is fiction, in researching an article that I wrote 10 years ago for the Central Conference of American Rabbis Journal on older adult sexuality, I actually found a document that was created by someone in California that talks about exactly this. It's called An Open Letter to My Spouse. And part of it goes like this. I may need an extra 3 minutes. The document acknowledged the love and commitment the partners have for each other and allows for open dialogue between spouses. In the event it is determined that the case is not reversible and that the other spouse is alive in body, quote, but significantly compromised mentally or physically, unquote, the statement is made to, quote, please find someone you like who will be available to provide the emotional, intellectual, and physical support and companionship that I cannot then provide you, unquote. Signed. Should the liberal Jewish community create such a document? Should we talk about this openly in congregation land, knowing that there may be people in Ahavat Chesed who are dealing with this? Do we have to redefine the word adultery in light of dementia and Alzheimer's, which is a life stage that can last years? Or do we say, as many people have told me, shut the hell up? Shh, don't. This is so private, we shouldn't talk about it. And if you have a document, when would you sign it? So some people say, oh, you sign it at the ketubah signing ceremony. And I said, do you think a kid who's 30 and 32 years old getting married for the first time, totally in love, would even understand the implications of this? Or do you wait until you sign your advance directive when you're actually talking about this? And if you do that, that's when you sign it. Do we have a responsibility to talk about this and create such a document? Or do we just say, shut up and leave it alone? Do we redefine? Do we have a responsibility in light of technology and the realities of what we're facing to redefine what adultery is in light of Alzheimer's and dementia? Nothing else, but very limited. Anybody want to react? Or is this totally foreign to your community? Police? Unmute. Quickly.
Did it. Thank you. The thing that comes to my mind immediately is, where would you draw the line? That's all. How does one know when to draw the line on that, and where would you write that in? It's kind of scary, very scary.
Well, that's why I'm raising it. My job is to make you think. You know, Bob and then Dan.
Now, what? And then if someone's on living with tubes in and everything else, the same thing. When do you let go on that?
That and you raise that, and not only do you raise that because but it's not limited to people with Alzheimer's. What happens, like in the Terry Schiavo case? What happens to somebody in a persistent vegetative state So this opens up. This is why some people say, just leave it be, just shut up. But the reality is, I'm not so sure we can continue to push everything under the rug when people are living with this. And by the way, people will come to the rabbi and ask. That's why I read and to raise it. Because this is real. Dan.
I just wonder,
Oh,
Oh, wait, look, that's very, your lips didn't move and it came out of Jan's mouth. That's very,
no,
you could go on
I
Ed
thought you said
Sullivan now.
Jan, I'm sorry.
All right, somebody,
I'm-
one of you take it.
okay. I'm of the shut up and leave it alone theory, I think, because I think it's a very personal that, let the person, I don't think it's real prevalent around here. I mean, I could be wrong. So I would let the person come and talk to the rabbi if they're concerned about it.
No, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like to raise it, because I think the issue should be raised, even if you don't do anything formal, but to allow people in the congregation to know, look, we're talking about this. If you need to talk, my door is open and I understand. So that's one of the ways of handling it. Jan, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is it necessary? Are you just, by offering this, are you giving them, are they asking for permission? Or I absolution from an old Catholic.
No, I be careful. No, I think this is, it's done. It would be done prior to anything, just sort of like a just in case. And it would require, if you'd actually put a document together, it would require a significant amount of pastoral counseling to talk to a couple and say, this is what you're doing. This is what it means. It's not giving you permission to run out tomorrow, but this is a just in a particularly horrible situation where you may be faced with this. So there's lots of things to talk about how you embrace this. And that's why a lot of people follow Dan's lead of saying, just once you open this door, it's going to create all kinds of issues. Maybe it's better to give a sermon about Alzheimer's and raise the issue and allow people to make up their own mind to come to the rabbi, as opposed to formally creating. But the issue's not going away.
Absolutely not.
And as more of our generation ages out and the instances of Alzheimer's and dementia multiply, which they are. Last one, Goldie, Acharon.
I think it's important that the conversation happen. And I think it needs to happen on two levels. One is that the clergy needs to talk, because otherwise the clergy of the individual institution is left to fend for herself, himself. So if there's conversation amongst clergy with Jewish text and Jewish understanding, the way you guys talk to each other, then the rabbi in our congregation is better prepared to deal with me when I walk in the door.
Correct.
It's important for the conversation to happen amongst the congregation, because the isolation for me of dealing with, God forbid, my partner who is in this situation, it is indescribable. And I would want to know that when I'm ready to talk, it's okay to talk, and that my fellow congregants in some ways are prepared to embrace me.
Right. Which is why I raise these rituals with you. And because so that you understand that this is all stuff that is happening right now. These rituals and prayers and meditations are being written now, and there's more being written every day. And we haven't even touched all the ones that have come out as a result of COVID. So I want you to think about it. And next year with Rabbi Glasser, if this is something that you want to pursue, maybe you can start with the Simchat Chochma or some of the other stuff, or raise some mental health issues and have a conversation. But this is what's happening in the lives of our people. Well, this is what's happening. And my feeling is, if it's happening in the lives of our members of our congregations, then the congregation has a responsibility to talk about it from a Jewish perspective, not from a from a Jewish textual theological perspective, not from any other perspective. This is our home game. That there's things that Judaism says about everything we've talked about, and it's important for our people to know about it. And to be honest with you, I think it's more important to talk about this stuff than solving the Middle East crisis, because the last time I checked, Benjamin Netanyahu really isn't calling up the rabbi of Ahavat Chesed and saying, gee, what do you think we should do about the territories? But the members of your congregation will be calling up your rabbi saying, I have this real issue and it's driving me crazy. How do I handle this? And that's where we need to be. Thank you very much. Don't forget Rabbi Kotak coming up next 3 weeks. I'll see you all next weekend. I'll be in town, I hope, American Airlines willing, as we slowly but surely move to reopen things. Just stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very
Be
much,
well.
Rabbi. Thank you,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Enlightening.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My
Wow.
pleasure. You take care.
Bye, everybody.
Wow.